I tend to not look at cameras, so.
Yes, you do.
So give me a leading question about Augusto Bowl.
How did you use Augusto Bowl, and why did you think it was? I think it's Boaldo, but do you think it's? How do you think it helped when we used it?
So there's this time in Brazil where a lot of innovation came out. And one of the great innovators, in addition to Paulo Freire and like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, these are like philosophical changes in their area, was Augusto Boal, if I'm saying his name correct. And he did something called, he did a lot of things, but he did something called Theater of the Oppressed. We used them in a variety of ways, but mostly like philosophically, he changed the interaction of theater with the audience. So sometimes in theater, they'll break the fourth wall, meaning that they'll speak directly to the audience. He actually had the audience engaged in the theater. So it's good for the classroom in that it really can be used as a tool to bring people together. So back in the day when we first used them for our theater, we basically did what I think he called it image theater. Mm-hmm. And the way it was explained to me was he brought in a diverse group of people. And basically the goal was to get the people to work together. So that was kind of the hidden agenda. And for example, he'd bring in a bunch of, in Brazil at the time, he'd bring in a bunch of like people with very different socioeconomic backgrounds or people that were having trouble with police or whatever. And he would have his actors go on stage and they'd basically do a freeze frame, a pantomime of what police brutality looked like. And you know, the actors would do what they thought. And all the actors were, I assume, like college kids or whatever. And they would do that, and then, you know, whatever, however they acted it out. Yeah. And then he'd say, freeze. And he'd ask the audience how accurate it was. The audience would be like, no, that's not accurate. And he'd be like, oh, go move them. They're adjustable. So he would actually have the audience go and move them. So now the audience is leaving the audience, and they're coming on stage, and they're actually physically directing the scene. And he'd be like, oh, cool, let me take a picture. Next day or next session, he'd put the picture on the wall and be like, this is how you see police brutality. I see one person's getting hit. I see maybe there's a cop that's actually nice. They're not all bad or whatever. And the scene is set up. Then he'd be like, okay, next one is, let's talk about what it should look like. What should good community policing look like with the community? And he'd have his actors act out, and maybe an actor do something like pat somebody on the head, and not just be like, oh, that's demeaning. Oh, you know what to do. Come up here and adjust them. And the scene would be redone where everyone is doing what they believe would make for a better police group interaction. Then he'd take a picture. And he'd be like, okay, so this is what it looks like now, and this is what we want it to look like. And I was okay. The final meeting, he would come in and he'd be like, okay, here are 2 pictures. And he'd be like, what's the picture in the middle look like? And he'd just like leave. So he'd force the audience to actually become directors. So Augusto Boal is very important in that he allows theater to be something that everyone can partake in. And it's good for the classroom because you can actually literally do that same thing. We did it with a classroom where we had a bunch of teachers, students. So we had a whole different group, and we said, what does a typical like middle school classroom look like? You remember that? Yeah. It was like the teachers got into it. They're like, oh no, you're doing it wrong. Like, and the teacher's like pulling a book from a kid, and one kid's like trying to ignore them. And it was very, I mean it was overacting, but it was very typical for an elementary, middle school classroom. So you get everyone in the same room, you freeze them, you take a picture, and then you have people kind of just go around and assess the situation and say, well, why is it this way? Why is it that way? And therefore, theater becomes the way that you can use to cause people to actually communicate. It's away from the personalization of it, like you're a good teacher, a bad teacher, or you're a good student, or bad student, or your family's good or not. It's more of like a collective discussion of how do we get to this point from this point. Mm-hmm. So that's why Augusto Boal is important.
Yeah, and I think it also raises awareness of why are we doing things like this,
right? Yeah, and just the whole idea that art art is always like put in its own segment where it's like it's outside the school system in many respects. It's often cut. It's seen as almost like an additional appendage that we don't need anymore, as opposed to an actual method of getting things done or processing information or bringing
Right.
community together. And it's really good at that. I mean, it's exceptionally good at bringing community together. It's exceptionally good at physical movement, at emotions, at dealing with emotions, at taking you can be emotional, but you can also be taken away from the situation at the
Right.
same time.
Because you're doing so
Yeah.
much at the same time. You're thinking, you're also acting it out. You
Yeah.
know, I remember when we did it with the students, they were so engaged. I don't think there was anybody who wasn't paying attention.
Yeah. It's one thing to feel it, it's one thing to read about it in a history book, right?
Yeah. And we did one also with the parents. Do you remember? It was the end of year play.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. People get into it.
Yeah.
It's weird because nobody wants to act
No.
until, that's the brilliance of Augusto Bowl, right? Like, nobody wants to act until you sneak into it, and then all of a sudden you're in there.
Because now you have something to say and you want to be in on the action. You want
Yeah.
to go and do something.
Yeah, because we had that tough dad. Remember
Right.
the tough dad?
I remember.
And he was sitting there, and then he's like, "Okay, I'll do it."
Yeah.
And by the end, he's just like yapping about it. He's
Oh,
like,
he
"Blah blah
had-
blah.
yeah.
This is why this is it." Right? It kind of opens them up. Yeah. So I highly recommend Augusto Bowl for any classroom.
I think it was we posed a problem or an issue at the end. Was it? We said, what would you like to happen? How would you like the scenario to change,
Mhm.
right? And then he came in and he said, no, this is what I would want to do. And then he didn't even say that, but he acted in a different way, and it changed the ending of the play, right?
Yeah, it's interesting too because it's a chance to be your better person. Because
Yeah.
how often when there's a criticism, you're kind of in the middle of the criticism. Like
Yeah.
you did something bad, or you reacted to something, or maybe you weren't your best person. But how can you be your best person when you have 5 kids that are yelling at you as a mom or whatever? Like,
Right.
this allows you to kind of step back and be a bit objective,
Yeah.
and also be open because like no one in that room has never been a bad parent or a perfect parent all the time, or a perfect
No.
teacher or a
Yeah.
perfect kid, right?
It's never black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I remember also we started it was simple, like we did very simple things. I think we asked the students in the classroom to do, I think, a family dinner. Remember?
Yeah, kids were fighting. Yeah, there's so many possibilities. And by the
So we
way,
started with something very simple. You don't have to really give it a lot of thought. Like
Yeah,
just just give me a
it's-
scene from a family dinner and show me what it is, and then you go critique it.
yeah, same problem. And I was just using one of his things, image theater.
Right.
He has a book of like 5 billion
Oh, I remember
activities,
you
and
told
he
me.
should be a household name in
Yeah.
education
Yeah.
because those tools are easy to use, they're fun, they're made for people who don't act, right? So, well, hopefully somebody will watch this video and do some of this stuff. All right, I have to go do recess
Alright,
duty.
sounds great.